Land flippers. Hey y'all. I'm Chris Thomas in Nashville, Tennessee, and this is Land Flipping 101, where you can learn how to earn your financial freedom through land investing, even if you're a complete beginner with no experience. Today, I'm going to tell you how I flip land using a double close and how to use an affidavit and memorandum of agreement, also known as an A&M. But first, there was a question. Kempton Schmidt asked, how are you posting land on the MLS? Don't you have to be a realtor? Well, Kempton, actually, there are some states where you can hire an agent in name only. There are flat fee services for as little as $99, and they can put it on the MLS for you. It's handled like a FSBO, a for sale by owner. So you can take the calls, but the realtor who's listing it is still responsible for disclosures and state required reporting. So they are really partnering with you. Hope that helps. Thanks for the question. Okay, so the double close. So when flipping real estate, there are three parties involved in the transaction, right? There's a seller, which we'll call A. Then there's you, the flipper, called B. And then there's the cash buyer called C. Okay, so there's a purchase and sale agreement between A and B, or the seller and me. And let's say it's for $40,000. B is going to buy the property, that's me, and take title, and then resell the property to C, the end buyer. And to do that, B and C execute a purchase agreement also for, let's say, $80,000. Now, because A is selling to B and then B is selling to C, there's going to be two separate closings, typically back to back. For closing one, B, or I am the buyer, and I will need to bring $40,000 plus closing fees to the closing table. Now, the $40,000 funds can be cash or in the form of hard money called transactional funding, which is short-term funding, or say like day funding. Now then, after closing number one between A and B, closing two happens between B and C. Now, since B, that's me, just bought the property and took title, now I'm the seller and C is the buyer at $80,000. Now, the reason why a double closing transaction can be less desirable as a flipper is because you can incur closing fees as well as transactional funding fees, which can add up to thousands of dollars. So why would I ever do a double closing? Well, the reason is to prevent your cash buyer from seeing your fee. You see, if your end buyer's money actually funds the purchase from the seller, or at least in my state, I must disclose to the end buyer how I am using his funds. And I don't want to be having unpleasant conversations with people about how much money they think I should make. Now, technically, it really shouldn't matter as long as the numbers work for the cash buyer, but sometimes it does. So by doing a double closing, the cash buyer doesn't really see how much I paid or subsequently how much I make. Because what happens in closing one isn't disclosed to the cash buyer in closing two. So he or she doesn't know how much you're making on the deal. It's like what happens in closing one stays in closing one. As a flipper, you'd want your fee to be big enough to justify doing any double closing because and also be okay paying the extra fees because there are extra closing fees and transactional funding fees when you're doing two transactions. So for me personally, it's my goal to make at least $20,000 on each deal. So it's worth the extra expense to me. But if I were only getting $5,000 or $10,000, I might just assign it, and then that's a whole other story. To make sure that your cash buyer is 100% committed to the deal, I also require a substantial non-refundable earnest money deposit because I do not want my cash buyer to flake out and no-show on the day of closing, and that has happened to me. Now, I do two things to make sure that that doesn't happen. Number one, I require a minimum $2,500 non-refundable deposit at the time of executing the contract, and preferably even more, say 5,000 up to 10,000. The bigger the earnest money, the more security you have that your cash buyer will perform on the day of closing. The second thing to ensure your cash buyer is 100% committed to the deal is to add a release of earnest money clause in the event the cash buyer defaults. Here's the exact wording to use in your contract. Buyer shall deposit blank, fill in the blank, how much money, non-refundable deposit with designated escrow herein if buyer fails to fund and close on the specified date herein. Buyer agrees that this serves as instruction to escrow to release said deposit as damages to me, and no further instruction to escrow is needed now. And that is the money shot right there, guys. This clause is important because usually both parties have to agree on releasing a deposit, which could be problematic. I added this to my contracts after learning the hard way when I had a cash buyer flake on a deal on the day of closing and then would not agree to allow escrow to release to me the non-refundable deposit, and it turned into a big fight. That clause makes it really easy to get the earnest money released to you, and most importantly, it communicates to your cash buyer to not play games and to take you and your deal seriously. Now, once you have an offer accepted, you may have concerns that the seller will get a higher offer and try to back out of selling to you. And so you will want to file an affidavit and memorandum of agreement, also known as the A&M. This letter you will sign and have notarized and then record in the county courthouse for which the property is located. This document clouds the property's title so that the seller cannot sell the property to anyone else other than you. And as long as the seller closes with you as agreed, they won't even know that you ever filed it on record. However, if the seller tries to close with another buyer, the title company that searches the title will see that the seller has an agreement with you, and the title company will contact you at the contact information provided on the affidavit. At that time, you will inform them that the seller already has an agreement with you and they're not supposed to be entering into any other sale with other buyers. This will stop the seller's closing dead in its tracks because the title company will not issue a title policy and insure the title knowing that you have an interest in purchasing the property. This A&M is a powerful tool that puts you in control and prevents the seller from closing on a higher offer from another investor after they've already signed an agreement with you. It adds extra protection when entering into long-term lease options, subject to deals, or agreements for deeds. Before using an A&M, though, be sure to check proper legal counsel and just fully understand how to use the notice. And as a special surprise for you, I'm going to give you the exact A&M letter that I use in my land flipping business on every deal I sign. You'll just go to the link that I'm going to drop in the comments, give your email address, and I'll send it right out. Hey, I wanted to check on any questions that might be in here. Jeff, can you provide us with the verbiage? Yes, I am going to do that. Andy, are you saving this? Not sure what you mean, but yeah, the video will automatically save. Can I double close in Florida? Yes, I've been able to do that. Corey Carroll, thanks. I'm interested in knowing, what does the training for your VAs look like? Oh, that's kind of a loaded question. I don't use VAs for this part of the process. Okay, thanks for the comments, and y'all, thanks for being here. If you have any other questions or want to talk with me one-on-one, look for the Calendly link to schedule a free 15-minute meeting with me, and I'd love to help you get started or even just get unstuck. You can find that in the announcement tab or the announcement post on the Land Flipping 101 Facebook group. So I'd love to help you get unstuck or get moving forward. And I want you to commit something to yourself, okay? No 0 days, meaning do not let one day go by where you're not doing at least one thing to help propel your business forward. Every day, consistently taking action, strung together over many days, is going to bring you great success. You can do this, and I will help. Thanks for joining today. Keep in touch.